Okay, so first I want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing me the joy and the privilege of going through these 12 steps with you. I don't know what happens to you, but I know what happens to me. And it has really been an extraordinary experience. So I want to get right into this because we don't have as much time as we normally do. So I want to talk a little bit about the 12 steps tonight. Your head's in the way. Thanks. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. We've been talking about the principles nonstop for the last few months. So I want to start tonight with a story, which is not my norm, but it's so near and dear to me. There was a woman who's not alive anymore. Her name is Lorna Kay, and she was a member in good standing of Alcoholics Anonymous and a good friend of mine. And one of the things I want to talk about tonight is not just how you do the 12th step, how you do your service work. I really don't care how you do it, just like I haven't really cared much about how you work your steps. You're going to do it, and you're going to be changed when you do it, and they're all designed to bring us back to God, and that's the end of it. But what I learned from Lorna is not why we do the 12th step. It's why we do the 12th step, which is very different than why we do the 12th step. So I want to tell you about Lorna Kay. Lorna was British. She was sober a long time. She was the first female auctioneer at Sotheby's in New York. And I'm not sure if anybody here knew her. Last time I saw her before she died was at the Atlanta International Convention. Anyway, Lorna was great. She was very outlandish. She was very nutty. She used to show up with all kinds of wigs and costumes on and festooned with jewelry with this crazy English accent. And, her goal in AA was twofold. She wanted to stay sober and she needed to marry a man who had a maid. That's what she wanted. And she thought if she could find a man with a maid, then her life would be settled. Anyway, Lorna went to meetings at Lenox Hill, which is, if you're not from New York, that is where you find a man, or the man, or a man with a maid. And so Lorna would go to the meetings in Lenox Hill, and occasionally I would go to the meetings, and I never saw a man with a maid, but she did. And one day she had this epiphany. We talked about God a lot, and she didn't get it, she didn't get it, she didn't get it. And one day, right after the meeting, she was wearing a Chanel suit because she'd come from Sotheby's. She had long red nail polish, bright red lips, high-heeled shoes. She pulled out her American Express card and said, I have to go. And she went to Kennedy Airport and she flew to Calcutta in search of Mother Teresa. By the way, if you want to read her story, she wrote a book called The Camel Knows the Way, and it's out there somewhere. In any case, so she flies to Calcutta, and Mother Teresa clearly doesn't know her and doesn't know that she's coming, but she arrives in Calcutta, and the only way to get to the mother's house where she treats these women, who are lepers and pregnant and sick, is to get there by camel. And Lorna got on the camel with a bunch of other people, and everybody had very exotic names for their camel, Sahib and Amir. Lorna's camel's name was Bob Marley. So she gets on top of Bob Marley, and the guy that owns the camels, she says, let me show you where I'm going. And he hits the camel on the butt and says, don't worry about it. The camel knows the way. And so the camel takes off across the desert with Lorna on there with her high heels and her red nails and her red lipstick and her Chanel suits. And she had no luggage with her whatsoever. And she arrives at the mother's house, and of course, Mother Teresa is not there. She's out tending to whoever she's tending to. And they said, you're welcome to wait for the mother. If you would like, she'd be delighted to meet you, but we don't know when she's coming back. And if you insist on waiting, then we have to put you to work. And so she stayed in this place, and she helped these women, and she cleaned up their vomit, and she cleaned up their runs, and she made the beds, and she did the laundry, and pretty soon her red nail polish was off her nails, and she was wearing a pair of slippers because her Chanel pumps were not making it in there. And one day someone makes an announcement that Mother Teresa has returned. And so Lorna sits down and greets the mother and tells her that she got a message in the room of Alcoholics Anonymous in a meeting, and that the message said, get on the plane and go to meet Mother Teresa. And she said, I can't tell you what else it said, but when I heard the message, I assumed that was God, and I have never understood anything about God. But nobody's ever told me to get on a plane and see Mother Teresa, so I'm assuming that that was God talking to me. And so Mother Teresa thought it was pretty funny, and they got to know each other a little bit better. So I guess about a month later, she was there quite a time. About a month later, the mother said that she was going to take Lorna out into the prayer garden, where they have statues, stone statues, and she's going to take her out there, and they can talk quietly and maybe meditate a little bit. And Lorna's out there, like that, and the mother is very quiet, and she's teeny tiny, and Lorna was my height. She was a very tall girl, and they're sitting there on a stone bench, and there is a statue of Mary Magdalene in front of her, a stone statue, and the mother is saying, you do understand what you're doing here, don't you? And Lorna says, I'm not quite sure, but could you tell me? And with that, Mother Teresa took the statue of Mary and pushed it back and leaned underneath the feet of the statue and pulled out a little piece of paper and gave it to Lorna. And on the piece of paper were the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Lorna said to her, why would you have the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous underneath this statue? And Mother Teresa looked at her and said, because it is a daily reminder to me that as many people as I have helped in the world and as many people as I have cured in the world, I cannot help an alcoholic. Wow. You can help an alcoholic. And only an alcoholic can help another alcoholic. And with that, Lorna came back to New York and went on this whole sort of parade about what service actually meant. And we were all with her. I mean, really all with her, because we had been consumed, as I know everybody is consumed, when if you have a sponsor, you're consumed with how you are doing the 12th step. What are you doing? What's your service this week? What are you doing? What are you doing? And Lorna comes back and tells us, guess what? I just got it from the highest authority that it doesn't matter what you do in the 12th step. It matters that we are the ones ministering to each other. We are the ones that are doing it. And that's why only we can do the 12th step. Nobody else can do that. The kind of service doesn't matter. I remember when I was first getting sober and they said, if you're going to make a 12-step call, and I don't know, those 12-step calls have kind of gone by the wayside, but we used to love to make them in the 80s because, we'd show up at somebody's house and you had to take somebody with you. That was the rule. You have to take somebody with you on the service call. Anyway, I put my name on this list to pick up drunk women. I don't know what I was thinking, but I put my name on this list to pick up drunk women. And of course, the drunk women, they call at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning. And so the person I would take, on the call with me was my son, which they also didn't think was a great idea, but he was the only one who was up. So I would put him in the car with me and we would go and pick up these women and they would sit in the back of the car. And after a while, my son would call them the jittery runs because they were in the back of the car sort of shaking all over the place. And we would drop them off, at the doctors or at the hospitals. And we did this over and over again. But nobody said it's in the big book. Where is that? Nobody says it's what you're going to do. And then I got sober and my sponsor, Albert, said to me, what are you doing Saturday night? I said, nothing. What are we doing? He says, well, we aren't doing anything, but you are going down to the hospital. And I was on the Upper West Side, and he said, and you are going to discuss step 1, the hospital on Saturday night. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I could do step 1 pretty good. I mean, I was new, but I knew it. And I would go down to the hospital, and to this day, I can hear this, the paper sandals, the paper slippers that they were wearing, as they shuffled down the hallway. What I didn't know is that they were brought in on Saturday. So by the time I got them on Saturday night, they couldn't pick their heads up. They all sat there with their heads on the table in front of them. I mean, like they were passed out cold. And I would do step 1 on Saturday night, and I came back and I said, okay, I'm done. What's next? He goes, next Saturday. There's another Saturday where you're going to do step 1. I want you to know that I did steps 1, 2, and 3 in that same hospital for 3 years. 3 years, I never had a date on a Saturday night. 3 years, I went to that hospital. And I don't know what happened to them, but I got it. I understood it. And in the very old days, and I totally miss these days when you could smoke in meetings, we did the ABCs. I don't know. Who remembers the ABCs? Ashtrays, brooms, and chairs. Ashtrays, brooms, and chairs. And I'm a good alcoholic. I took the ashtrays because I was cheap, and I would take your butts out of the ashtrays so I could smoke them. And that way I didn't have to buy quite so many cigarettes. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter because the power of this step is not in the what you're doing. It's that who is doing this and why are we doing it? Because there's the unbelievable feeling of belonging to this thing. And that is what the 12th step is talking about. When 9/11 happened in Manhattan, and some of you were, in New York when that happened, it was a horrible time. And, the natural New Yorkers, I'll call them, the natural New Yorkers, we were beyond overwhelmed, just beyond overwhelmed. I mean, the fear in my throat, and everybody was nuts. And anyway, I was at my home group, 96th Street and Broadway, and chairperson got up and they said, who has more than 5 years of sobriety? And we raised our hand, and they said, who is a sponsor? And the same one of us raised our hand, and they said, there's transportation waiting for you outside, take you down to the Perry Street meeting. Perry Street meeting was all the way downtown, so we didn't know, and we went, and we got in there, and the room was filled with people. The Perry Street station, so was the Perry Street meeting was the closest meeting to where the towers came down. That was the closest meeting to it. And we walked into the Perry Street meeting, and the chairperson said, who in this room needs a sponsor? And almost every hand went up, because these were the sponsors who had died in the towers. And he turned around and said, you're with him, and you're with her, and you're with him, and you're with her, because he knew we were the strangers coming in from the Uptown meeting. And I think I walked out of there with maybe 4 or 5 different sponsees who I sponsored for a very long time. But they were at a loss. And who is going to console them? Who is going to show them how to get through this tragedy except somebody who knows how to get out of the hole themselves? Again, we're the only ones that can do this. So step 12, having had a spiritual awakening, because we did all of the other steps. We did them all. And they're all designed to make us do things these actions that I actually know will not work. They're asinine. But I have a sponsor who I'm afraid of. And so I do them anyway, knowing they won't work. And when I do them, I'm absolutely stunned that they do work. And then a few months later, after that, I take credit for the whole thing. But the truth is that I didn't think they'd work at all. But we did them anyway. I mean, that's what my sponsor said. We do them anyway. So here's the thing. All we got out of that is this understanding that there was a power greater than ourselves. So now we get to the 12th step, and here's the problem. They rewrote it and they redo it all the time because many people don't have a spiritual awakening and they don't have a spiritual experience, and they don't have this, and they don't have that. Here's the bottom line. It doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. Get to the 12th step. And if you don't believe in God, and if you don't believe in a higher power, go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and listen to everybody else who does. I don't have the power as a sober alcoholic to show you where God is. I don't have the power to tell you this is how you find God. The only thing I have the power to tell you is, if you want to stay sober, you're going to need it. That's it. And then the decision is yours. And we make those decisions all throughout the 12 steps. But that's the only thing I can tell you, that if you want to stay sober for any length of time and you want some type of peace in your life, you're going to need a higher power because you already figured out you can't do it yourself. Can't do it yourself. And secondly, even more upsetting, you have figured out that nobody in AA can help you either. Nobody can help you get this power but you. It doesn't come right away. So some of us have that spiritual awareness. Some of us have the spiritual awakening. Some of us have the spiritual experiences. And all I knew, listening for all the years that I'm in there, is that whatever it is, you all got it. And it looks different from mine because by this time, we've developed out of necessity our own interpretation, our own concept of God. Because we're in the rooms of AA, where we first learned what unconditional love is and our own conception of love. So the thing that we see also in AA that's a little bit disconcerting is that everybody who has this concept of God is very busy giving it away. Everybody they talk to, I need to talk to you about God. Sit down, and I'm going to show you what this is. But they got the power back in the 11th step, and now they're very busy giving it away. So there's tremendous power for us, because we get it in the 11th step, in giving this stuff away. Tremendous power. That's why the newcomers, they cling to us, because we appear to have this power to give something to them that they can't figure out how to get for themselves. But here is the weird, strange thing about that kind of spirituality, is that that kind of spirituality is all based on very negative things about us. It's like all the very worst things about me, like the things I couldn't stand about me, like the things I was just a craphead that I couldn't stand about me. These things turn out to be the very gift that you give to another alcoholic, because that's what they're connecting with. That's what the newcomer connects with. And that, by the way, they connect with my awful, awful past. They're also connecting with the fact that I don't have it anymore, that I've recovered from this disease. And that's why we're the only ones who can do this. And that's why psychiatrists can't do it. And that's why paid drug counselors can't do it. And that's why your families can't do it. And of course, that's why Mother Teresa couldn't do it, because she didn't have what we had. So it turns out that our alcoholism and all that ugly, rotten, filthy past things that we did is a wonderful spiritual gift that we pass on to the next person. Because if I'm sitting next to you in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and I'm telling you how wonderful I am, and I'm telling you about God, and I'm telling you that I made restitution and I paid money back, you're out the door. You're out the door. But if I'm sitting next to you saying to you, by the way, I was drunk when I was pregnant too. I gave my baby away too. Then that's something that you can relate to. And then I turn around and I say, and I don't do those things anymore. So you give the hope at the same time. And we are the only ones who can do this. And so there's a lot of joy in wanting to do this. So when this happens, when you find yourself in the midst of doing the 12th step, one alcoholic to another, you have to take a second to think about what's going on. This is really interesting to me, because when you're reaching out to somebody and you're reaching out to the people, you think to yourself, I don't understand this. How come it's me? How come it's me? Aren't I like this selfish, self-centered craphead of a person? Haven't I always been that way? Isn't everything I'm doing in AA a fake? Isn't it just a cover for who I really am? And so I'm gonna suggest that maybe it's the opposite. It's the opposite. And this is what brings me to tears every day. Maybe that's not who you were at all. Maybe that was the fake. Maybe for the first time in your life, you're seeing the real you. Maybe the real you is a loving human being, is a giving human being. And the craphead was the fake persona that alcohol put on all of these things so that people didn't see that warm and runny piece of us on the inside. And we get to AA and our armor drops long enough so that we can help another alcoholic, and they turn around and they think you're a god. They don't understand how you're doing what you're doing. And we turn around in the mirror and say, maybe I am like every other person in the world, a child of God. Maybe that's me too. And I've just been blocked by these sort of old ideas and alcohol. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe sitting here tonight without a drink and listening and feeling the God in the room, maybe that's who we really are. And this other stuff was a big bad cover, a big bad cover. So as we, did this journey, turning inward to find these things, the real us emerges. The real you comes out, and you're in this recovery. You create great joy and hope for another alcoholic. And I would end now, except the rest of it is no. It doesn't last. It's a problem. It's a problem. I can be joyful and hopeful for, I don't know. Clancy used to tell me all the time he never met an alcoholic who could stand serenity more than 3 days. I think that's my limit. My limit of joy is 3 days, and then I have to do something to screw it up. Whatever that's going to look like. And so what do? Well, we sit around and we think, well, I'm feeling pretty crappy again. I feel shitty again. I'm trying to figure out, what do I do so I don't feel like this anymore? I know what I have to do. I'm going to call my sponsor and I'm going to work the steps again. Because clearly, if I'm feeling crappy, I need to work the steps again. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing. For one thing, Bill W. is very clear about it. We work the steps once. And you figure, well, once is not going to do me for the rest of my life. That's completely true. You have to work the steps hundreds of times with other alcoholics. With other alcoholics. Because how are you supposed to get better and feel better if you're fully focused on yourself again for another 12 steps? So you work the steps once, and then you turn around, like my sponsor said to me, and said, see that one over there? Go work them with her. You know, I hated the girl he gave me. Hated her. She had a headache every day and tell me that she had a brain tumor. And after 3 months, I wish she did have a brain tumor. I mean, she bothered me. She bothered me. And the only thing that happened to her is that she stayed sober. And when she finished the 12 steps, I thought, well, who's the lucky girl who's going to get to this one? And I said, now you got to go out and get somebody else and work the 12 steps with them. And so at any given time in my sobriety, no matter how many sponsees I have, and most of them have long-term sobriety, so it doesn't really bother me anymore. But there are always a couple who want to work the steps. And the reason I work the steps, and I meet them every week, is because it's going to help me. I don't have the power to have it help them. I don't have the power to keep them sober. And as I said, I don't have the power to show them God. But the longer they work with me, the more they understand that I wouldn't be where I am without God. And so if you have a good sponsor, then they tell you, no, we're not working the steps again. Go work them with somebody else. Go work them. And if you are a sponsor, I'm sorry if I've offended you. I'm not really sorry at all. You know, if you are a sponsor, that's the first thing you say to your pigeon, to your baby. You say, you know, great work on the 12 steps. Now go work them with somebody else. If you want to stay sober, if you want to be sane, if you want to have some kind of serenity and peace and joy in your life, you don't need to work them again. We don't need to do anything again in AA once we do them once, because the second time around we're doing them for somebody else. And that's all this 12th step is about. So, you know, I've told you that Clancy was my mentor, and he scared the crap out of me, I need to tell you. You know, I quote him all the time, but he really did scare me to death because he was gruff and he was rough. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he was somebody that I needed. I needed gruff and rough because apparently I was gruff and rough and didn't know. You know, so I sat him down one day and I said, I need some answers from you. I had done my steps. I was working with others. We were together in a place called Salem, not Massachusetts, some other state in that area. And the only thing I remembered is when we drove in, there was a big sign that said no smoking. Like the whole town was no smoking. Because I don't understand that. Like even if you're outside in the bushes, there's no smoking in the whole town. And Clancy turned around, he goes, I don't smoke, but I'm getting the hell out of here. But we didn't. You know, we went down, we stayed in a crappy hotel, and there were a bunch of people there. We were there for a sponsorship, kind of symposium, workshop type of deal. And I thought it was fascinating because Clancy didn't have a sponsor. And he was up there, he's going to teach us about sponsorship because everybody had died. He was sober so long at that point that everybody who had ever sponsored him, was dead. And so we, talked about that. But that night, I said, I need your ear. And I need your ear for 5-10 minutes because I'm troubled. I think I've done everything right. I'm in no danger of drinking. I'm in no danger of using. But, as you know, I've been married 5 times. And this troubles me. This troubles me. I feel like I'm a successful sober alcoholic and a really bad wife. And I don't know how to come to terms with this. What do I do? Why do I keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? And, when he sat me down, very simply, and he said, Carin, nothing is wonderful once you get used to it. And I foolishly thought he was talking about my marriages. He was talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. He was talking about long-term sobriety and Alcoholics Anonymous. That after a while, it ceases to be wonderful. gets a little gray. You see the same people, the same meetings. They say the same things over and over again. I'm not learning anything. You know, they haven't washed their clothes. They wore that shirt yesterday. You know, you start looking at these people differently, and he would say, nothing is wonderful once you get used to it. And he said, you got to figure out what to do to keep Alcoholics Anonymous wonderful once again. Well, it turns out that what I have to do to keep AA wonderful is more. More. And for a long time, I didn't understand what more was. And he said, you will understand what more is when the joy returns to AA. When the joy returns to AA. So it turns out that more is service. That more is always service. When COVID hit and we all had to, scurry onto Zoom, people didn't really know how to work it, and they did the best that they could. And I was in a Zoom meeting in Manhattan, and the chairperson, who I knew pretty well, she was a newcomer, but I knew her pretty well, wrote me a note in the chat and said to me, there's a girl in here that wants your number. Can I give her your number? So I said, sure. What did I know? Well, she didn't know the controls very well. So there were 200 people in there, and she gave my number out to the entire group. So my cell phone number is now printed up there for 200 people, and I'm watching everybody write down like crazy because I'm the speaker at the meeting. And when the meeting was over, my phone starts blowing up. All these people are calling, and all they want to do is talk about themselves. And I don't have enough hours in the day for that, and they are calling and calling. But I need to tell you, for the next 3 days, I got an infusion of AA that I had not gotten in years. In years, with all these cockamamie, crazy newcomers calling me, just wanting me to know what problems they had in their lives. 3 days of this, and of course, it's Alcoholics Anonymous. After 3 days, they stopped calling. They needed to call somebody else who was interested in their problems, because clearly that wasn't me. So what I'm saying is, and what I'm trying to make clear, is that it doesn't matter what we do in AA. It doesn't matter what we do in this step. You do the 12th step, you're sitting next to somebody right now, you're sitting next to me and you're not drinking, and that's service. But you have to draw these lines yourself. You have to draw the lines and the boundaries of what service means to you, with the understanding that we're the only ones who can do it. We are the only ones who can help each other. And so if that means, if you take the low bar and say service is showing up at a meeting, you're going to have some low bar sobriety. That's what I want to tell you. If you raise the bar a little bit and say, my service is I go to AA meetings and I share, well, that's the kind of sobriety you're going to have. If you turn around and say, well, I go to a meeting every day, and at the end of the meeting, I raise my hand and I say, I'm Carin, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm willing to work the steps with somebody, then you're going to raise the bar a little bit more. More. I did and continue to do whatever I need to do to keep AA wonderful so that I am a joyous alcoholic. Because if I'm going to be angry and sad and vengeful and maniacal and plotting, I might as well be drinking my Jack Daniels, because it'll go down a lot better with that. But I want some joy, and I want peace. And I want to be able to live my life a day at a time as an alcoholic and be a happy camper. It tells us right there in the book, happy, joyous, and free. So in order to do that, I'm willing to do more. So we were at a meeting yesterday. I don't know the name of the meeting. Look, Melrose Park, right there. And I was the speaker at Melrose Park, and when I was speaking, there was a girl sitting in the audience that sort of had her head hanging. And as I'm talking, I'm watching her head raise like an inch at a time, an inch at a time. And at the end of the meeting, she held her head high. She clapped, she laughed, she had a good time. And then she never spoke to me, never said anything, and just walked out. And I thought, that just made AA wonderful for me. That makes AA wonderful for me. So I want to, again, I want to thank you for the privilege of doing these steps. It's really been, what it did for me is it made AA wonderful again. That's as simple as that. It just made AA wonderful again. And for the only time, Maddie, this one's for you. The only time since I'm doing this series, I'm going to read from one of these books that I typed out here. Yeah. And it's my favorite passage because I say all the time that the word surrender is not in the first 165 pages of Big Book. It doesn't exist, not there. But they tell you is to abandon yourself to God. Don't surrender. If you're smart like me, you understand what a conditional surrender is. But if I'm conditionally surrendering, I'm going to get some conditional sobriety. And I don't have any room for that. So this little paragraph tells me, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Good, better, best. Whatever you think it is. Admit your faults to Him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. I love you all. It is a great day to be sober.